Hi, my name's Joel Lett. Welcome to my channel. I've pasted a few prophetic dreams that I've had in the past and some newer ones all together, all relating to the same thing, relating to the COVID-19 virus and the coming judgments and war and economic collapse. They're all pasted together. So enjoy. The first dream was I was walking on top of a grassy ridge, and there were people all around me, and it felt like wartime, and I could see soldiers all around us. It felt like Nazi Germany, but I knew I was in the U.S. somewhere. Tables were set up with small boxes open on the tables. I heard an air raid siren wailing close by, and the people started running towards the boxes. The boxes held surgical masks. The people were quickly putting them on and running down the hill to the ravine. Pup tents were set up, and everyone was piling into them. Sensing the imminent danger, I ran to the table, grabbed a mask, and ran down the hill. I went into the first tent I could find. Several young people were inside the tent panicking. A young girl was crying. We could hear the bombs squealing as they were dropping from the beautiful blue sky. A bomb dropped right beside us, and I knew we were doomed. I heard a whirring sound from the bomb and thought it was a dispersant bomb that released some deadly virus or toxin. Some young guy grabbed a defenseless girl and held her up to protect himself from the bomb. What a spineless jerk, I thought to myself. I grabbed her and put her behind me, trying to protect her from the explosion. I awoke at this point and looked at the clock. It was just after 12 a.m. I remembered the day before during prayer the Lord speaking to me, saying by 12 that night he would speak to me concerning of the things that are about to come. Recently, with the coronavirus, it's pretty obvious that that dream was about that. But what I didn't mention in the dream is I had several dreams concerning the same thing over the years. And one of the dreams was that there was an airplane flying low over a major city, and the back door of the plane was open, and there were two men in the back dropping some kind of powder onto the ground below, and they were laughing while they're doing it. They had a big drum, and they were just smiling away, thinking this was the greatest thing, and I thought it was some kind of something like that. And what happened in New York City seemed to tip the scales. Everyone was looking at all the different countries, but yet New York City seemed to be hit the hardest, and yet there was no reason why. I'm pretty sure that this was an attack, that it was not something simple, and even that the attack came from China. I'll tell you why, because back in 2007, I had a dream, and 5 angels came to me in a dream. And they told me that the stock market was about to crash, and that China was behind it. And exactly one year from the day I had that dream, the stock market crashed, and they knew that it was some hackers. Over the years, I had many dreams concerning something happening, very similar to this. But the end result wasn't about the virus itself. It was about collapsing the economy. It was about destroying the economy. And many of the dreams I had were people doing anything to get food, breaking into people's houses with guns, people looking for water. The simple thing of drinking water was impossible to find even. People were laying on the ground, crying out to me as I walked by with parched voices asking me to give them water. Even in one of the dreams, I went to Paris in the dream, and I saw people around the Eiffel Tower also doing the same thing. They were laying down on the ground going, "Water, water." In another dream, I was walking through old country roads in Virginia. I saw dead bodies piled at the ends of driveways on old mattresses. The bodies looked like maybe 90 pounds. They looked like Holocaust victims, in fact. It made me so sick it was difficult to go down there. Since I frequent Virginia a lot, it scared me sometimes going down there because I knew this would happen when we least expect it. It would come very suddenly. So if you think this is about the coronavirus, it is not. It's about seizing control of all our finances, seizing control of all the people. We're headed for the New World Order when they take control of all mankind. And we're going to see it happen in our lifetime. I also saw when the Depression hit, it would be way worse than the old Depression. It would literally make the old one look like a skip in the park. And that we're all headed for that. And this was so that they could take control of all of us. Because afterwards, people would sign up for anything, including getting the chip that you can't buy or sell. It kills me the way the politicians are responding like this is just a normal thing to line up for our groceries and to have to wait in line, or getting curbside delivery that we have to order online and then go pick it up. The biggest thing I've noticed is we're turning into a cashless society overnight. Suddenly our cash isn't welcome anywhere because they might have the corona germs on them, the coronavirus on the dollar bills. So now when I go into stores, they warn you as I walk in the door that you can't use cash. They warn you before you start shopping. In fact, I've even had to take cash I had on hand and go to the bank with it, put it in the bank just so I could take it out of my debit. Something I've never had to do before. Many years ago, I told people to buy farms, to sell their homes in the city and move out to the country. That way they could be self-sustaining and even get off the grid if possible. Very few people seemed to, even think along those lines, and didn't they think this was even possible, but yet it happened overnight. Just like in my dreams, it was on a beautiful sunny day, and suddenly there were troops all around us, and the government had taken over our lives. Many people even came against me because of what I was saying. They thought I was crazy. But yet God insisted, and I kept having dream after dream after dream that this was coming. It didn't seem possible, even to me sometimes, but yet it happened overnight. And quite frankly, I kind of laughed when it happened because I felt vindicated for the first time in my life. It's been so long since this has been coming, or the Lord's been showing me these things, but I've never been able to see any sign of it, really. The biggest sign I saw was that all these instant grocery tellers now, where you do all your own work, you do your own bagging, and then you have to use your debit card. They don't take cash. That's been coming for the last couple of years. All of a sudden now, it's like no cash at all. Before, at least you could go to one of the, or some of the cashiers and get normal treatment. I posted many of these old dreams on my YouTube channel, and if you don't know my YouTube channel, I think you should check it out. My YouTube channel isn't just about trips to heaven, but also about the coming World War III that I believe is between China and the U.S., and then will even work into Russia and the U.S. We've seen little signs of that coming along. I must say I'm completely amazed at how many of my friends have just been so sucked into this media frenzy over COVID-19 when more people die of the flu every year, and there's no mention of that at all. Even other things like starvation or heart attack or whatever are 100 times more, and yet there's no mention whatsoever in the news. It's like they can't see. It's like a delusion has come over them, and they're just in a frenzy, hiding in their homes, hiding everywhere, thinking that this is somehow a real thing. And it's not a real thing. The virus itself may be real, but it's nowhere near even as something as simple as the flu. A couple of years ago, they were warning us about the H1N1 flu and that millions could die. And the H1N1 flu is the Spanish flu where 50 million people died. But because we live in a different society now where our health is much better, we take care of ourselves, we have much better food, and in antibiotics. And so now when we go through the H1N1, it was barely a scratch. People didn't even really even notice it that much at all. And yet it's worse than this COVID virus now, COVID-19. I can't make people drink the water. You can only lead them to it. And I've been trying for a while. But I must say, I'm getting pretty frustrated by the whole thing. To me, it's so obvious that this thing is a scam, just like 9/11. And I was shocked how long it took for people's eyes to open up. And as the years went by, almost everyone believes now 9/11 was an inside job. And yet here we are, years later, knowing how corrupt the whole system is, and this dark entity in the government taking control of everything. And yet here we are going through the same thing right now, and everyone's being seduced into the same thing. I must say, I'm totally shocked. I didn't even think it was possible. And then we have in history all the stories about Hitler. And yet here we are witnessing the same thing. We're seeing people turn in their friends because they've been out in the streets or conversing with other people, and they're standing too close to them. I must say, I'm completely amazed at how many of my friends have just been so sucked into this media frenzy over COVID-19 when more people die of the flu every year, and there's no mention of that at all. Even other things like starvation or heart attack or whatever are 100 times more, and yet there's no mention whatsoever in the news. It's like they can't see. It's like a delusion has come over them, and they're just in a frenzy, hiding in their homes, hiding everywhere, thinking that this is somehow a real thing. And it's not a real thing. The virus itself may be real, but it's nowhere near even as something as simple as the flu. A couple of years ago, they were warning us about the H1N1 flu and that millions could die. And the H1N1 flu is the Spanish flu, where 50 million people died. But because we live in a different society now where our health is much better, we take care of ourselves, we have much better food, and in antibiotics. And so now when we go through the H1N1, it was barely a scratch. People didn't even really even notice it that much at all. And yet it's worse than this COVID virus now, COVID-19. I can't make people drink the water. You can only lead them to it. And I've been trying for a while. But I must say, I'm getting pretty frustrated by the whole thing. To me, it's so obvious that this thing is a scam, just like 9/11. And I was shocked how long it took for people's eyes to open up. And as the years went by, almost everyone believes now 9/11 was an inside job. And yet here we are, years later, knowing how corrupt the whole system is, and this dark entity in the government taking control of everything. And yet here we are going through the same thing right now, and everyone's being seduced into the same thing. I must say, I'm totally shocked. I didn't even think it was possible. And then we have in history all the stories about Hitler. And yet here we are witnessing the same thing. We're seeing people turn in their friends because they've been out in the streets or conversing with other people, and they're standing too close to them. I tagged the other dreams on the end of this. I downloaded it from YouTube because I couldn't find the original files. I dreamt I was on the ocean on some kind of exotic cruise ship. I was positioned near the front and was looking backwards over the whole ship. Everywhere I looked, people were obnoxiously drunk and partying. I looked in my hand and I was holding a martini with an olive still in the glass. The ship reminded me of the Titanic, and everyone seemed obnoxiously wealthy. It was then I noticed that we were going extremely fast. My hair was blowing forward and was wrapped around my face. The people I saw sickened me. I couldn't understand what I was doing there on that ship. The scene I was looking at was one of extreme opulence. Friday, June 20th, 2003. I dreamt I saw a globe of the world on the floor of the shabby house. As I got close to it, it began to shake violently, at least 4 feet off the floor. At this, I thought it must be the enemy doing this, so I began to rebuke it. As I began to open my mouth, it was instantly bound, and I was prevented from rebuking it. I got really scared, and it shook even more violently. I looked over in the corner as I saw something moving. It was a small baby that was naked and lying on the floor. I looked and I saw in its hand a cutting blade that was very sharp like a razor. It was a blade that was used in those food processors, but much bigger. I then awoke. This is what the Lord said.
I am going to shake this world. No amount of prayer or fasting will stop my hand. I will not relent until the cries of the unborn have stopped. Apathy has taken over my people. They worry about Harry Potter and start big campaigns, while innocent children are murdered every day in the hands of these wicked people. Who has ever seen such insanity? My hand is coming against these nations that practice these detestable practices. I will shake every nation.
Dream, February 11th, 2003. I dreamt I was at a large church in Toronto and I was in the foyer. I was talking with people about the real church and someone I knew started screaming at me defending the church. I then began to prophesy loudly. The Lord is coming to destroy this place. He is coming in power to tear down every man-made structure. Nothing shall be left, only the true church, a church without walls. A church where Jesus will be the headship, a church with the Father's love. This church will wear shoes. At this point, everyone began to get really angry at me and someone screamed, "How is God going to do this?" I screamed back as loud as I could, "War, war, war." I then woke up. As soon as I awoke, I felt the Holy Spirit and the Lord began to speak to me. This is what he said.
I have released the destroyer across this great land. Nothing shall be left standing. For the want of the world has stolen my people from me, and I will not stand for it any longer. I shall destroy all those worthless idols they cling to. Nothing shall be left them. Then I will see who are truly mine. Those I see worshiping me and giving me the glory, though they have lost all, are mine. Those who become embittered and wallow in self-pity will be cast into the fire. I will remove all those that are not mine from my sight.
Dream, February 1st, 2008. I dreamt a friend asked me to go to the grocery store, but I had to take a horse and buggy. I jumped in the buggy and proceeded on my way. I was going up and down very tall hills, and I thought I must be in Virginia. Many times the horse would go down the hill way too fast, and I thought it would crash, but he seemed to do just fine. There were no cars anywhere. When I finally got to the grocery store, it looked as if civil war had broken out. Bodies lay in the streets everywhere I looked. Most seemed to have died from starvation. Grown men appeared to weigh about 80 pounds. They were less than skin and bones. Some were crawling across the ground, and I wondered how it was possible that they were still alive. They were so grotesque I could not even look at them. Several had bullet holes in them, obviously from trying to get groceries at the grocery store. One man rolled over and moaned. He had 3 arrows in him. When I got to the grocery store, there was absolutely nothing left. Every shelf had been cleaned out, and it looked like an abandoned store. Bodies lay in the aisles. I went back outside to go home. I realized many people were naked as they were lying in the streets. I wondered if people stole their clothes. February 17, 2008. I dreamt it was nighttime and I was in an open field. I thought the location was near Kitchener, Ontario, but it was hard to see any landmarks since it was nighttime. I saw something move up in the skies, and my eyes were automatically drawn to it. I saw the moon, and it seemed unusually large. It appeared as if a big chunk had broken off and was falling. It looked to be about a quarter of the moon. I remembered this from a dream I had before and wondered how it was possible for a piece of the moon to be broken off. Below that, I saw 4 smaller moons, approximately 1/4 of the size of the large one. Each one appeared to be a quarter waning. I saw a shadow of a man with some kind of object above him. There was a long rope attached to this object, and the man appeared to be climbing down it. I realized suddenly that there were thousands of these ropes hanging down from what appeared to be dark helicopters. Each one had men scurrying down the ropes to the earth below. I was standing right where several of them would land on the ground, and my heart began to pound. I then began to fly up to where they were, and one of them passed me by, hitting me in the shoulder. He hit me so hard I thought my shoulder would break. His boots were black and all of his clothes, and there were no markings anywhere on them. I knew these were secret forces, and this was the beginning of the Great War. February 25th, 2011. I dreamt I was standing in the U.S. somewhere. There were several people all around me, and for some reason seemed quite content. It was a beautiful sunny day, very peaceful in fact. The sun was shining, the air was warm. You couldn't ask for a better day. I looked at a woman who stood across from me, and I recognized her from some church somewhere. She seemed gloriously happy for some reason, and had a real look of contentment on her glowing face. I suddenly heard a sound behind me and turned around to see who it was. We were suddenly surrounded by troops in dark uniforms. Some were sporting machine guns, other high-powered rifles. They started escorting us and pushing us and shoving us against our will. They seemingly came from nowhere, and somehow I knew they were taking us to concentration camps. Fear gripped me inside. I thought to myself, why didn't I leave the U.S.? Why did I stay here? I knew this was coming, and I knew it was coming on a bright sunny day when people would least expect it. I knew I was going to die, and that we're all going to be eventually shot. I'm hoping in the future to even interview some authors or other ministers, anyone in the prophetic. Right now, I guess I'm just doing it on my own until that day comes. Hopefully the Lord will give me some new information, some new dreams about the coming events. Stay tuned for that. And I'll post something as soon as I can. You might not know this, but I do have a few published books. One that's on my testimony of my several trips to heaven and meeting with God and Jesus, and even seeing the Trinity at one time. Also, I have a handbook on the prophetic if you're interested in the prophetic. I wrote this book as a more like a textbook for people that are working in the prophetic or want to work in the prophetic. Each of these books, of course, are available on many different sources. Apple, iTunes, if you want the EPUB book, or if you want a hardcover, which is probably better, and for the one book anyway, for the manual, the prophetic manual, you can buy that on lulu.com is probably the best. It's called the Prophetic Manual by E.J. Olette. And the testimony book is The Majesties of His Kingdom by E.J. Olette. And it's also under another label under Joe Olette. And each of these books will transform your lives. I've had many people come up to me and hug me and said the book completely changed their life. The unique perspective I have of meeting with the Father and the things He showed me will change your life dramatically. And you'll be more prepared for the future, that's for sure. Anyway, I'll see if I can leave a link somewhere yet. Anyway, thanks again. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.